Hi, I'm Kat Landreth of PairInFocus.com. This week I gave myself a challenge to try to take pictures with my husband's 4-year-old 7-megapixel point-and-shoot camera that look more like they came out of my fancy pants DSLR. And I'm a firm believer that it's not the gear that makes the picture, it's the technique and the photographer that make the picture. I mean, I've really seen great photos that come out of an iPhone camera. So if you can make great pictures with a cell phone, I know you can take great pictures with a real camera. Like I said, this thing doesn't have a ton of megapixels. It's only 7 megapixels, but that's plenty. And it's 4 years old, so it doesn't have the most advanced technology. It's not a brand spanking new camera. So this is a little bit of a challenge for me, and I'm probably not going to be able to do everything that I want and get every effect that I want straight out of this camera, but that's okay because I have a little help. I use a free photo editing program called GIMP to edit my pictures, and there's actually a lot of really cool, really fancy stuff you can do with GIMP. So in this video, I'm going to show you the setup. I'll make another video about how I do the editing in GIMP, but this video is going to be all about the light, how I set up the background for my picture, and the different settings in the camera that I use. So I hope you like it. So what I want to do is take a camera that might ordinarily take a picture that looks something like this and use it to make a picture that looks something like this. There's a few characteristics of the DSLR style of photo that I'm going for here. One is there's lots of dimensionality. This picture doesn't look flat. You can see all of the dimension of the pendant. There's a nice background blur quality, and there's a shadowless background. And I'm going to do that without a light box. When I think about the light for this photo shoot, there's a few things in particular that I'm thinking about. One is the angle of light. I don't want light coming in from directly in front of this pendant because I want to see some dimensionality and some texture in it. I'll arrange everything so that the light's coming in from the side of the pendant and scraping across the side of the pendant. Another thing I'm going to think about is the quality of light. I'm using window light instead of my on-camera flash or a desk lamp or any kind of artificial light. And I'm not using direct sunlight. And I want really soft, nice, diffused light to cast really nice, soft, diffused shadows. If you can see the glowing ball of the sun through your window, that's not window light, that's direct sunlight. You can try hanging up some sheer curtains, a white bed sheet, or even a frosted white shower curtain would work. And all of those things will diffuse the sunlight and make it softer. The last thing I'm thinking about is the amount of light. Because I'm using this soft diffused light, that also means that there's not going to be as much light as if I used on-camera flash or direct sunlight. Because there's not as much light, the camera needs a little extra time to make the picture. If the camera shakes while it's making the picture will be blurry. So I'm setting my camera on a tripod. If you don't have a tripod, you can try setting your camera down on anything that's sturdy, anything that's going to keep it from shaking while the camera is taking a picture. Be careful not to shake the camera when you're actually pressing the shutter button. And if your camera has an automatic timer, that's an awesome idea to use that now, because then you're not actually even touching the camera at all when it takes the picture. So let's take a look at this from the camera's point of view. Because the window light is coming in from the side and kind of above, we're getting nice highlights on these little silver stones. On the opposite side of the highlight, there's shadows down underneath these silver stones. And the highlight and the shadow work together to show the texture of this pendant. There's also a highlight underneath all of these silver stones because I'm using a white piece of paper as a reflector. And that reflector is just bouncing window light back into the pendant and filling in the shadows a little bit to make them softer. Now I said I wanted a shadowless background without a light box. This trick that I'm going to use isn't going to be possible for every kind of picture, but if you can hang something up, this is a great trick to use. For something small like a pendant, I do this with earrings and other necklaces as well. I just take 2 picture frames and I string a wire between them. You can use a string too. And I just hang the pendant or the earrings or whatever up on that wire. To keep things simple, I can put my reflector, my white piece of paper, directly underneath the pendant and just leave it there. Then I don't have to monkey with holding it or propping it up or anything. And you can already see that because of the angle of light and because I'm hanging my pendant instead of setting it directly on top of my background, that the shadow from the pendant is falling underneath the pendant. It's not directly behind the pendant. So that means when I set my background up and I take the picture, I can crop that shadow out completely. So ta-da, there's my shadowless background with no light box. Now, like I said, I know this isn't going to work for every kind of picture. You can't hang your friends up, for example, but you can ask them to stand a few feet away from the background. If you're taking pictures in front of a brick wall or something, ask them to stand 5 or 6 feet away from the brick wall instead of directly in front of it. And a nice side effect is that'll usually make the background a little bit blurrier, and that's one of those sort of signature DSLR looks. For smaller things that you can't hang, it's still okay to just set them down on your background because we're doing so much to keep the light nice and soft and diffused. The shadow that your subject is casting isn't going to be that hard anyway. The last piece of this puzzle is the camera settings. So first and foremost, I set my camera to macro mode. When the camera is not in macro mode, it's really hard to get close-up shots. The camera won't focus that close. But when it is in macro mode, it's easy to get in close and get nice, crisp, clear shots. The second thing I do is turn the flash off. On-camera flash casts harsh shadows in all the wrong places. If you look here, all of that nice textural shadows and the play of highlights and shadows is gone. The pendant just looks kind of flat, but there's a really harsh shadow directly behind it. In the exact same setup, but with the flash turned off, using natural light instead, and look how much better it looks. All of the dimensionality is back, the light and shadows are back in my picture, and that harsh shadow behind the pendant is gone. Another thing I like to do is try to match the white balance setting in my camera to the light that I'm using. White balance settings help control the color in your pictures. So if you notice that your automatic white balance is causing your pictures to be too yellow or too blue, too warm or too cool, sometimes even too pink or too green, the trick is to match the white balance setting to the kind of light that you're using. We're using natural diffused sunlight. So there's a few different settings we could try. We could try the sun setting, but the sun setting is really for direct sunlight. You can try the cloud setting, which is for sunlight diffused through clouds, or you can try this house setting, which is for sunlight diffused by shade. Either of these settings are for diffused sunlight, and since we're using diffused sunlight, they should work out pretty well. If it doesn't make the colors in your photo exactly right, that's okay. That's an easy thing to fix in a photo editor like GIMP. If you use the light bulb setting or the bar setting while you're using natural light, the colors in your picture will turn out really jacked up. So I'd avoid those. If your pictures are coming out too dark or too bright, you can try the exposure compensation setting in your camera. It usually looks like a sliding scale, and you either move the scale to the left to make your pictures darker as you take them, or to the right to make your pictures brighter as you take them. If your pictures are coming out grainy or speckly, turn down the ISO setting. You can try portrait mode even if you're not taking a portrait. Portrait mode will generally brighten photos, and it often blurs out the background even more, which again is one of those signature DSLR looks that we're going for. So that's my setup, those are my tips, and next time I'll show you how I take this picture from this to this in GIMP. If you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe to Pair in Focus, and I really hope that helps. If you have any questions, leave a comment below and I'll get right back to you.